Respect doesn't come from trying to please others. It comes when you stop asking for permission to exist. And that's the part almost no one understands. Every time you walk into a room trying to fit in, soften your opinions, or seem acceptable, something invisible happens. The room doesn't read you as a reference point, it reads you as a reaction. And where there is reaction, there is no leadership. Thinking like the 1% isn't about status, money, or speaking louder. It's about operating with mental clarity, emotional stability, and internal control. People like this don't fight for attention. They organize the room just by the way they think and carry themselves. In today's video, you're going to understand the mental mistake that makes respect slip through your fingers and the silent pattern that makes some people be taken seriously without needing to prove anything. Stay until the end, because once you get this pattern, the way others see you instantly changes. 1. The mental mistake that makes 99% seek respect the wrong way. Most people walk into a room trying to be accepted, trying to please, trying not to cause friction. They adjust their tone, soften their opinions, and say whatever seems safest in the moment. The problem is that this behavior communicates emotional dependence. Someone who needs approval gives off insecurity, even without realizing it. And the human brain reads insecurity as a lack of leadership. Respect doesn't come from that place. The 1% move in the opposite direction. Instead of trying to please, they structure their behavior to be predictable, stable, and trustworthy. People like that don't change who they are to fit the room. The room adjusts to their presence. That creates an invisible sense of order. When people know what to expect from you, the group's anxiety drops. And where uncertainty goes down, respect goes up. Social psychology is clear on this. Groups don't respect people who seek approval. They respect those who reduce noise. Those who bring clarity, direction, and consistency become automatic reference points. It's not about talking louder or seeming smarter. It's about reducing the mental chaos around you. The collective brain relaxes around someone who organizes the space with few words and firm decisions. Think of a typical corporate meeting. 10 people talking, over-explaining, defending ideas like they're on trial. And in the middle of it, someone speaks little, but when they do, they settle the issue. They don't interrupt, don't compete, don't over-explain. That person starts getting viewed differently. No promotion, no formal announcement. They start leading informally. Respect shifts. There's a simple tool the 1% use before speaking. A quick mental checklist, almost automatic. Does what I'm about to say increase clarity, direction, or confidence in the room? If not, it doesn't need to be said right now. That filter changes everything. Because respect doesn't come from being interesting, it comes from being useful to the group's mental state. And very few people understand that early on. Most people spend their whole lives trying to earn respect through visible effort. The 1% build respect through invisible control. One seeks acceptance. The other provides stability. One reacts to the environment. The other organizes it. And once you notice the difference, you never speak the same way again. Because respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you trigger with the right behavior. 2. How the 1% think about status, and why it changes everything. Most people believe status is something you show off. Cars, job titles, clothes, credentials in your bio. The 1% understand the opposite. Real status isn't shown, it's inferred. It's born from the repetition of stable behaviors over time. People don't need you to tell them who you are, they figure it out by watching how you act when no one's trying to impress you. There's a clear psychological frame here. When someone is consistent, predictable, and non-reactive, other people's brains start assigning them authority automatically. It's not magic, it's mental economy. Humans look for shortcuts when deciding who to trust. And consistency is one of the strongest signals of perceived leadership. When you constantly change based on your environment, you lose that signal. A 2014 study from the Stanford Graduate School of Business analyzed how leadership is perceived in professional groups. The research observed participants in decision-making tasks, evaluating their language, emotional reactions, and behavior under pressure. The result was clear. Individuals with greater emotional self-control and low reactivity were consistently seen as leaders, even without formal positions. Status was assigned, not claimed. In practice, This completely changes the way the 1% communicate. They cut back on over-explaining. They don't dive into endless justifications or defend themselves before being questioned. They speak in short, complete, and closed-off blocks. That structure communicates internal security. Someone who over-explains seems like they're asking for permission. Someone who delivers a full idea sounds like they're owning responsibility. See the contrast? Most people think they have to prove their worth constantly. The 1% act like their worth is already built into their behavior. Not out of arrogance, but out of internal clarity. When you stop trying to convince others, they start paying more attention to you. And attention is the first step to real respect and status. In the end, status isn't about seeming important. It's about reducing the mental effort for those around you. People with a stable presence do that naturally. They don't fill space with anxiety, they fill it with direction. And once you understand that, you stop chasing external signs and start building an internal pattern that speaks for you. 3. The mental language of the 1%, clarity intensity. Most people believe that to be heard, they need to speak with more emotion. They raise their tone, speed up their speech, dramatize their arguments. The result is usually the opposite of what they expect. Excessive emotion makes the message lose weight. The listener starts reacting to the delivery, not the content. Authority doesn't grow with intensity, it grows with precision. The 1% understands something counterintuitive. The more emotional you sound, the less control you convey. And control is what the brain associates with competence. Calm people seem to be in charge, even when they say less. Not because they know more, but because they don't sound pressured by their own words. Calm becomes a silent signal of inner mastery. Neuroscience explains this phenomenon clearly. Research in social processing shows that the human brain links calm, organized speech with higher cognitive ability. When someone speaks slowly, using full sentences, the listener assumes there's structured thinking behind it. This triggers automatic trust. It's not an opinion, it's neural processing. That's why the 1% organize their thoughts before opening their mouths. They don't throw ideas into the air hoping the other person keeps up. They pick one point, develop it, close it. This clarity reduces the listener's cognitive effort. And whenever you reduce effort, you increase engagement. People follow those who make thinking easier, not harder. A practical tool used by the elite is the 1-point rule, one idea per sentence. No tangents, no side stories, no built-in justifications. It sounds simple, but it takes self-control. And that's exactly why it works. Someone who can stick to a line of thought shows mental maturity. In the end, clarity beats intensity in any power setting. Emotion grabs attention for seconds. Clarity builds respect for years. When you trade urgency for precision, something changes in the room. People stop listening to you out of politeness and start listening to you as a reference. And that's one of the 1%'s quietest breakthroughs. For why the 1% never try to impress? Most people walk into conversations trying to sound smart, interesting, or special. They pile on arguments, stories, and unnecessary details to make an impact. The problem is that trying to impress signals a need for validation. And neediness is picked up quickly, even when no one can quite explain why. The brain links that extra effort to internal insecurity. The 1% do the opposite. They don't try to shine, they try to be consistent. Real value doesn't come from bursts of performance. It comes from a predictable pattern of behavior. When someone only acts well when they want to impress, the group senses instability. But when someone acts the same way all the time, the group relaxes. And that relaxation turns into automatic respect. There's a silent form of social proof in this. The most respected leaders speak less than they could. They don't take up all the available space. They choose when to speak, and more importantly, when not to speak. That self-control communicates internal power. Someone who could talk a lot, but chooses not to shows mastery of the situation. Picture a CEO in a tense meeting. Tough questions come up, expectations are high. While others over-explain, the CEO answers with yes, no, or I'll check. No fluff, no emotional defense. The effect is immediate. The room senses that what's present is discernment, not anxiety. Respect grows in the silence that remains. There's a simple habit behind this. Removing automatic justifications from daily vocabulary. Words like because, actually, or it's just that usually appear when someone is trying to protect themselves. The 1% cut these verbal crutches, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. Someone who constantly justifies themselves comes across as being in debt. In the end, impressing is a short-term game. Consistency is a long-term one. One gets attention for minutes, the other builds authority for years. The 1% choose the quiet game. Because they know respect doesn't come from performance, it comes from having nothing to prove. 5. The psychology of silence. Why pausing creates authority. Most people are terrified of silence. When the talking stops, there's an automatic impulse to fill the space, more words, more explanations, more details. The problem is that this impulse reveals anxiety. Someone who can't handle silence is signaling a need to keep constant attention. And that subtly, but continuously, lowers their status. From the perspective of behavioral science, silence isn't empty, it's processing. A 2018 study from Harvard Business School analyzed communication dynamics and power in corporate settings. Researchers observed leaders in strategic meetings and assessed the impact of pauses on the perception of authority. The results showed that intentional pauses increase the perception of control and leadership because they give the listener's brain time to process the information. Here comes the counterintuitive point that few people accept. Those who fill every silence lose implicit status. They seem too available, too reactive, too exposed. Well-placed silence makes the other person do the mental work. And whoever makes the other person think assumes a position of psychological advantage. Leadership starts exactly there. Picture a direct question asked in public. Most people answer too quickly, as if they're being tested. The 1% do it differently. They pause. 2 seconds. Look at the person asking. Organize their response. That pause isn't doubt, it's discernment. And the group senses that immediately, even without consciously realizing it. There's a practical tool to train this. The 2-second rule before answering any meaningful question. It's not for show, it's self-control. This brief gap prevents emotional responses and forces clarity. Over time, this pause becomes a behavioral signature. People start to expect it. Silence isn't a lack of power, it's a demonstration of it. Those who control their own pace control how the environment perceives them. The 1% understand that saying less at the right moment is more powerful than saying a lot without structure. And once you learn to hold silence, something shifts. Respect shows up even before your response does. 6. How the 1% make decisions, and why it instantly creates respect. Most people believe that decisions need to be perfect in order to feel safe. They gather endless data, seek more opinions, delay taking a stance. The problem is that prolonged indecision signals weakness. When someone takes too long to decide, the group assumes there's no clear criteria. And where there's no clear criteria, respect starts to fade. The 1% think differently. For them, a clear decision is more valuable than a perfect one. Clarity reduces collective anxiety. Even when the decision isn't ideal, it creates movement, direction, and predictability. People prefer to follow someone who decides and adjusts, rather than someone who hesitates trying to get everything right the first time. The data backs this up. A 2020 study by McKinsey & Company analyzed over 1,200 global leaders in high-complexity environments. The research looked at decision speed, the criteria used, and team confidence levels. The results showed that leaders who make faster decisions with explicit criteria generate greater trust and performance, even when not all their decisions are perfect. The key isn't empty speed, it's visible judgment. The 1% make their thought process clear. They show reasoning, not insecurity. When you lay out your criteria, the group understands your logic, even if they disagree with the result. Cognitive transparency builds instant respect. There's a simple model phrase that sums up this pattern. Based on this data, the best decision right now is X. This structure does 3 things at once. It shows analysis was done, grounds the decision in the present moment, and closes the discussion. It doesn't leave room for emotional noise. In the end, people don't follow decisions, they follow decision makers. Those who project mental clarity become fast reference points. The 1% don't wait for trust to arrive before deciding. They decide with judgment and let trust follow. And almost always, it does. 7. The invisible behavior that commands respect. Most people confuse availability with value. They say yes to everything, reply too quickly, accept any kind of demand. The intention is good, but the effect is harmful. When you're always accessible, other people's brains register excessive abundance. And anything that feels abundant tends to be treated as disposable, even when it's confident. The 1% understand the opposite. Boundaries don't push respect away, they create it. People who respect themselves first teach others how to treat them. Not through speeches, but through consistent behavior. When you protect your time, energy, and focus, you signal self-control. And self-control is one of the strongest markers of implicit status. Social psychology explains this mechanism simply. Clear boundaries communicate self-respect, and the human brain tends to mirror that signal. If you treat yourself as a priority, others adjust their perception. If you always put yourself second, the group quickly learns they can do the same. It's not personal, it's automatic. See how invisible this is? It doesn't involve confrontation or aggression. It involves consistency. The 1% don't set boundaries when they're irritated. They set boundaries as a standard. This eliminates drama and reduces emotional wear. People know where they stand, and that creates more security, not less. There's a simple and powerful script for this. That doesn't work for me in this format. Short, calm, no extra explanation. This phrase doesn't apologize, and it doesn't attack. It simply informs. And someone who informs calmly holds a position of psychological balance. In the end, boundaries are a silent language. You don't need to announce authority when you live with intention. The 1% know that respect doesn't come from being always available. It comes from being consistent in what you accept and what you decline. And when your boundaries are clear, so is your position. 8. The 1% think long-term, not in the moment. Most people operate in immediate mode. They want to win today's argument, look right in this moment, come out on top in the short term. The 1% operate with a different mental frame. They understand that every interaction leaves a trace. Nothing is neutral. You're either building your reputation or wearing it down. And almost no one notices this as it's happening. For the 1%, every interaction is a reputational deposit or withdrawal. Keeping your word is a deposit. Overreacting, over-justifying, or exaggerating is a withdrawal. Small behaviors, repeated over time, create a strong image. It's not about big gestures, it's about invisible patterns. Reputation isn't built on epic moments, it's built on quiet consistency. Data backs this up. A 2017 study by MIT Sloan School of Management analyzed trust and leadership in long-term corporate settings. The research followed leaders over several project cycles, comparing performance outcomes with perceived reliability. The results showed that consistent reputation weighed more in the group's trust than isolated high achievements. This changes the entire game. The 1% don't sacrifice reputation to gain momentary approval. They're okay with losing small points now if it means maintaining coherence later. Because they understand that trustworthy people get called back more often for important decisions. And those who are called often accumulate power without needing to fight for space. There's a simple practice behind this, called the 1% rule. Act today as if someone important is watching even when no one is. Not out of paranoia, but out of identity. The 1% behave the same way in private as they do in public. This congruence builds a reputation that doesn't rely on personal branding. In the end, reputation is an invisible asset that works silently. While many chase immediate recognition, the 1% build a presence that speaks for them before they even enter the room. And once you understand that, you stop playing for the moment and start playing for the psychological legacy you leave in every interaction. 9. Respect is a consequence, not a goal. Most people make a mistake right from the start. They turn respect into a direct goal. They want to be respected, they want to be recognized, they want to be validated. And precisely because of that, they lose all of it in the process. Seeking respect openly creates tension, expectation, and emotional dependence. The group senses it. and respect disappears before it even has a chance to exist. The 1% understand the opposite of that approach. Respect isn't something you chase, it's something that happens when certain conditions are present. When you try to force it, the effect is the opposite. It's like trying to look confident while constantly thinking about whether you look confident. The wrong focus sabotages the result. There's a simple mental summary that brings together everything we've covered so far. Clarity, self-control, and boundaries. Clarity in speech and decisions. Emotional self-control under pressure. Firm boundaries around your time, energy, and acceptable behavior. When these three elements are in place, respect appears without being announced. The key point is that this doesn't require visible effort. It requires invisible consistency. The 1% don't wake up thinking about impressing anyone. They wake up focused on maintaining their internal standard. And strong internal standards create clear external signals. People sense it before they fully understand it. There's a final tool that helps anchor this behavior in daily life. A silent question to ask yourself before acting or speaking. Does this reinforce or weaken my position? Not your social position, but your psychological position. That question shifts small choices, and those small choices, over time, change everything. In the end, respect isn't a trophy, it's a byproduct. It shows up when you stop chasing it and start acting like someone who doesn't need it to feel valid. The 1% operate from that place. And once you understand this, something shifts inside. External respect becomes nothing more than a natural consequence of the internal control you've built.